Buongiorno, buonasera, benvenuti amici. Welcome my friends. My name is Vincenzo and welcome to my channel, Fountain Pen Therapy. Well, for those of you who have visited my channel once before or many times before, welcome back. Thank you for tuning in. For those of you who are first-time viewers, well, welcome. Benvenuti, benvenuti. I hope you're all doing well. Spero che state tutti bene. Health is important. And fountain pen therapy is important, and I hope you're having lots of it. So today we're just going to continue. As you will have noticed in my latest videos, before going on vacation, I had ordered a bunch of Chinese pens, and they're all coming in, and they've all come in. So as quickly as possible, I'm trying to get my reviews out so that they don't become totally stale dated and insignificant in the scheme of things, because in the fountain pen community, especially in the Chinese fountain pen community, things sometimes go pretty fast, and you've got to, seize on the occasion before it becomes totally irrelevant. So today we're going to be reviewing another Jinhao pen, and that pen is the Jinhao 82. I chose to purchase a set of 3 colored yellow, blue, and green sparkling resin. They came in a set of 3, and I purchased all 3, and I'm going to give you my thoughts on this pen, and we'll go immediately to my overhead camera and begin my review, so stay tuned. Okay, so welcome back. Here are the 3 pens in question. Okay, we have the yellow resined demo, the blue, and the green. Now, I'm not going to go over the outer and inner shells of each pen because obviously they're the same pen. So what I propose is that I take the green one and work with the green one and take you through some of the thoughts I have, and by using this particular color. Okay, so first things first. Let's take a look at the outer shell of this pen. Now, let me begin by saying that there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that this is a knockoff, and a knockoff of Sailor's Pro Gear Slim. Okay. Now, I've had some disagreements with some of my viewers on other Jinhao pens and whether or not they are a deja vu, or whether they're a clear knockoff, or whether they have any originality to them, the Jinhao 9019 being one of them. But in this case, let me be perfectly clear, I'm not going to try to defend this pen and try to demonstrate to you its originality, because it is a knockoff, okay? And, when you try to knock off Sailor pens, Sailor has an excellent reputation, so whether or not this is even a good knockoff remains to be seen, okay? But having said all of that, what I propose is that we take a look at this pen on its merits, and I will give you some and share with you my thoughts. First of all, I think that I must make another confession, and maybe 2 more. One, I do not own a Pro Gear Slim. I own other Sailor pens, including a Sailor 1911 Standard, but I don't own a Pro Gear Slim. Reason being is that I'm not a great fan of small pens. So right from the outset, I might have a bias here, and I'm hoping to be able to be as objective as possible when reviewing this pen, because I know that some of you do like smaller pens, and it would be unfair for me to, criticize this pen just because I don't like small size pens. Okay. Second confession is that I don't like small nibs either. So we will take a look at that in a few seconds. Having said all of that, not owning a Pro Gear Slim, I'm not able to put this pen side by side one, but I can tell you that the bend is slightly different but very similar. The clip may be a little bit different, but in all respects, this pen is a knockoff. Right to the size. Now, I'm not going to waste your time giving you the exact measurements of this. I think you can look that up on your own. But I can tell you that the measurements that I've looked up for the original Sailor Pro Gear Slim are exactly the same as the measurements of this pen. So if they're going to knock it off, I guess you'll knock it off right up to the measurements of the pen. So let's look at the pen on its own. Well, first of all, one thing I do like about this pen, I must confess, is I like demonstrator pens in general. I like the fact that we can see the interior mechanism, and I like even more this sparkled green resin on this pen. I don't know if you could see that on my camera. I think that's a nice touch. Whether or not Sailor has used such resin is hard for me to say. I mean, Sailor Pro Gear Slims, there are so many out there, limited editions and different colors, etc., that I can't keep up with all of them. Okay, so I'm not even sure that Sailor has actually made a demo for that matter, and some of you may correct me, and please feel free to leave comments so that all the other viewers can share in them. But like I said, it's not a pen that I'm fond of to begin with, and certainly in my internet browsing, I don't believe I've ever seen a Pro Gear Slim demo. But having said that, I do like the fact that this demo does have this sparkling resin. Okay, as far as the clip is concerned, it's completely useless. It is too stiff to use, and I hesitate to go any further because it might just crack the whole thing right open. So don't rely on being able to use this. Whether or not any material can slip through on its own, perhaps, but there's it's so stiff that I can't even move it. Okay, I like that. I like this gold knob that you see at the top here. That's nice. It adds some trimming, which is always nice. The trimming of the bottom is with that same sparkled resin with a gold ring, which adds again some color and some flair to the pen. So that's essentially the outside of this pen. I don't really have much more to say about it. Let's look at the inside. First of all, how many turns? That's 1, that's 2, and that's 3. So maybe 2 3/4 it's opened. In opening the pen, and we'll get to the nib in a second, what I do notice is that I do like the build quality of this pen. It does have an interior seal cap, and you could see that on my camera, which I guess is designed to keep it nice and sealed and keep it from drying, which is a nice touch. I believe that the Sailor Pro Gear Slim has a similar mechanism, but I'm not sure. If it doesn't, well, kudos to Jinhao. The quality of this resin. Now, some people have said plastic, acrylic, and I may be mixing up the three, and I apologize, but we understand each other. Whatever material this is made of, I think it's resin, is a nice touch, and it appears to have a certain thickness to it, which makes it, at least to me, all the more enticing, and it gives it also a little bit of a quality weight, if you will. Okay, so that's for this cap. As far as we'll get to the nib in a second. As far as the rest is concerned, it opens up to reveal an interior, a converter, and it could be used with a cartridge. I like the converter. The converter is a nice quality converter. One thing I noticed is that it's got a hole here. It just I don't believe I've ever seen a Jinhao. And again, I might be mistaken. Maybe I never noticed it. But usually these things are capped, I would believe. But anyway, I just noticed that there is it just goes right through there. Hopefully that doesn't add to the drying of this pen and keeps it wet when it has to. The O-ring there is also a nice touch because it helps seal this pen nicely. Okay, so now whether or not that O-ring can make this pen an eyedropper, given that it does have that metal interior threading. I would doubt it, but maybe it does. Frankly, I've not tried it, and I wouldn't recommend that you try it either. It does have that is similar. I like the fact that there is this green sparkle resin there. Now, as far as the nib, let's get to the nitty gritty of this thing. This nib is a number size 5 nib, and unlike many pens where I would have preferred to see a number 6 size pen, this one can't, given its size, has to be a number 5 size nib. So, but out of the box, it was complete disaster. Okay, I must tell you, all 3 of them, it's a medium nib in all 3 of them. So, if one of them was a dud, you would think that the other 2 maybe not, but the whole set were duds. The nibs were not performing. They were extremely scratchy, hard-started. I couldn't get them to perform. There was no flow. So I had to, do some work on them. And it took me a little while, but I managed to spread apart the tines of that nib slightly, and also did some smoothing of the nib. And I believe I've succeeded into making these nibs, acceptable at this point in view, but at this point in time. But we will see that in a few minutes when we look at our writing sample. So that's essentially it, except for one more thing. I do want to show you whether or not it caps. Yes, it caps very nicely, and indeed, by capping it, in my view, it makes it a much more it gives you a better writing experience. Writing with this pen without posting it, for my bigger hands, is just not it's not a pleasure filled writing experience. Whereas if I do post it, and it does post nicely and tightly and securely, it gives it just a little more weight, the weight that I think this pen deserves, and it almost makes this small pen acceptable to me, at least. So that takes care of the outer and inner shell. We're going to take care of some. I'd like to do some pen and size comparisons, and then we'll get to our writing sample. So stay tuned. Well, first, we're back with a size and pen comparison, if you will. You can see the Jinhao 82 is right there. Next to it is a mini Parker Duofold. And to my great surprise, it's just slightly bigger than that mini Parker Duofold, which is a vintage and which is a really, really nice little pen. This is probably the only small pen. There may be another one from another Monte Grappa small pen that I like, but otherwise there's just a few. This is my standard Sailor, and we'll take a look at the nibs in a second. This is the Metropolitan, and Pilot Metropolitan, which is, a small pen, and yet still substantially bigger than the Jinhao 82. This is a cute little pen. I've got a few colors. This is the Pilot Pluminix. Usually they come bigger, but I find that these pens have such great nibs, especially stub nibs that write really, really nice. Maybe one day I'll do a review on them, and they're fairly inexpensive. And I like these little pens just because of the nib. So, but again, I prefer the Pluminix. It's a little bit longer as opposed to these little guys, but that may be another one that I like. The Pelican, well, it's hard not to like a Pelican, but it, this is the 200, which is, a smaller one and rivals, I guess, in size with the Jinhao 82. And then I have a TWSBI, I believe it's the 580, but mini. Do they call it the 580? I believe they do. Anyway, it's the TWSBI Mini, which, as you could see, is even smaller than the Jinhao 82. Now, in terms of nibs, my understanding is that the Pro Gear Sailor come with 14 karat nibs, and they certainly don't come They may also come in these 22 karat nibs that usually are, you'll find in the, for example, in the standard version. Now, you could tell that, there's just no comparison. That sailor, that genuine sailor nib, as small as it is 22 karat, and I've got to tell you, we'll do a writing sample later, writes like a gem. So if Jinhao wants to imitate sailor, that nib disqualifies it automatically, no matter how good the outer shell or the pen itself looks, or how good the imitation is. They'll never be able to imitate that nib, I can tell you. That nib is absolutely exquisite. So that's the 22 karat nib, which makes me appreciate this small pen. In fact, it's probably the only reason why I would appreciate a pen of that size. So there you have a size comparison. Now let's come back and see what they look like posted. Now, as you can see, they all, by the way, all these pens post nicely. So so this is a true comparison. So, you can see where the Jinhao is situated, roughly in the same place, if you will, in terms of size comparison. It is, it's bigger than this small Pluminix pilot, but it's certainly just as big as the Twisby posted. Rivals with this Pelican, okay? And you know what? It comes close to, these three. So the posting, you can see, adds, in my view, adds some character to this pen and makes it a usable pen. That's my own personal view. Okay, so there you have the size comparison posted. Okay, so we're back for the writing sample. And first of all, the three inks that I've used for these three pens. The gold resined or yellow resined Jinhao 82. I've used this Califolio R Doré, which I think is going to go nicely with that yellow sparkle resin. For the green sparkle resin one, I've used this Verdura from Rohrer and Klinger, which is also, I think, a very nice match. And for the blue pen, I'm going to be using Robert Alster Blue Denim, which too I think is a great match. So those are the three inks we've inked those pens with. In terms of the journal, as you know, lately I've been using the Tomo River paper because I'd like to make my reviews a little more consistent. And I'm in this notebook for a while here, which is Wonderland 222, which I purchase on Etsy site. I will leave a description in the description, a link should you want to look into it. Okay, so that's the notebook. Now let's get to the writing samples. Now, before we go any further, I want to tell you that I'm going to be doing writing samples for only these two. And not the blue one right away, because I've got a little surprise for you. So stay tuned for the blue one. But these two, I've chosen, the yellow because it's a lighter ink and sometimes has difficulty. The lighter inks are difficult and may not come through, in terms of performance as well. And we'll see how it does. And this green one, which is a darker color, which should be, smooth and regular, and we shouldn't have any issues. So let's start with the green one. I will post it because that's the only way I can use this pen. Okay, there we go. So this is the Jinhao 82 green sparkled demo. The nib is, now I don't want to make a mistake. Yes, it is. The nib is a Jinhao number 5 size medium nib. Now, I can tell you that right now, this pen appears to be, or at least the nib appears to be usable, but it was far from being so when I first started with this nib. Okay, in terms of wetness, I would say fairly wet. It is constant. It does, it does keep up. I don't believe that we can say that there's any hard starting or skips here. Smooth. It's as smooth as it will ever get. I've tried, but a little scratchy. Some would say feedback, but I'm not sure it's the nice feedback that I would want this pen to be where I want it to be. But having said that, it's at least usable. And in terms of the rest of the characteristics, as you can see, it's following. It's keeping up pretty well. So that's the green. Let's look at this yellow one, see if it gives us anything different in terms of performance and feel. I would say very similar. Even in this yellow ink, which normally is a lot, it's not as easy to write with or to get it to perform, because it is a light ink. And again, this is a Jinhao number 5 medium. I just don't know what the extra fine would look like. I mean, again, it must be my bias, because I don't like fine, like big, juicy, double broad stub pens. That's unfortunately my bias there. But again, as being as objective as I can, there is some flow there. It's not as smooth as I would like it to be, but it is constant. It does keep up. There's a little bit of scratchiness, and you can hear it maybe in the camera. I don't call it nice feedback, but on the other hand, it's not scratchy to the point where the paper is being ripped up. Okay, so there you have both writing samples, and I can assure you that the blue pen, with its original nib, had roughly the same performance when I tested it originally. And the reason why I say originally is because I wanted you to see what this pen, Jinhao 82, and how it would perform and what it would give us in terms of writing pleasure if I replaced the nib. And yes, I've replaced the nib on this pen with a, I don't know if you can see that. Here we go. It's an Edison number 5 1.4 stub. So let's look at what this pen gives with this stub. And again, I haven't used it in a while, so hopefully it will not hard start on me. No, it won't. Look at this. I mean, blue sparkled demo, which is with that, blue denim Robert Oster ink. The nib on this sample is the Edison number 5 steel 1.4 stub. Okay, and obviously it is a stub. The line variation is there, and it's just a juicy, juicy, juicy nib. And in terms of performance, I got to tell you, this is just a pleasure to write with. Now we're talking. This is really, fountain pen therapy. It's smooth as butter, thick, juicy. The line variation is there. The sheening on this ink, it comes out. So, you know what? It's almost a go-to pen. Almost a go-to pen. Now, I did want to show you one more comparison, just so that, in all fairness to Sailor, if this pen had a a 22 karat Sailor nib, like this 1911 would have, this is what it would look like. So this is the Sailor, okay, and 1911 standard size. I mean, talk about buttery smooth. And even that little bit of feedback, it's butter feedback. So, the nib is an exquisite 22 karat nib, Sailor. I mean, this is a pleasure. So I have no illusions. There's no such thing in that Jinhao 82. Now, let's go back on this other page and let me go through what I would say is the rating of this pen. So, let me just post it. So what is my rating? In terms of design, it's a knockoff. I'm giving it a 5 just for effort. Build quality. Look, I'm not an expert. I know that, we have some other pen reviewers like Doodlebud and Chris Rapp and even my Canadian friend from Inking Minds that, I go through the resins and how it's built. But I frankly cannot find anything wrong with the build quality of the pen. It might be a knockoff, but in my view, it's a well-built pen. So, I mean, I can't criticize it because it's small. That's the way it is. So I would give it a 9.0 in terms of build quality. In terms of the nib, I've got it rated based on the nib that came out of the box, and I can't give it more than 6. And I'm giving it 6 just because it was salvageable, and it's barely salvageable. In terms of value, well, this is where these Jinhao pens at $30, $30 to $35 for all three, they come roughly $10, $11, $12 each Canadian, so that even less American, US dollars. I mean, the value is there, so I've got to give it, a 10 on 10 on value, because it is a pen that writes, fairly well once you fine-tune it. It functions very well, so in terms of value, it's a 10 on 10. Is it a go-to pen? For me, absolutely not. So I'm not even going to rate it. It's not a go-to pen for me. It just isn't. So there you have it. I hope I've presented to you some entertainment and some value and some information that will help you decide whether or not these pens are what you're looking for. And please leave comments. Please subscribe if you haven't done so. And stay tuned for the next review. And don't forget, fountain pen therapy is important. Thank you.